What's up, everyone? MK Tom Brady here. In this podcast, I'm joined by two players. First, one of the most decorated players in all of NRS history, Forever King, and his brother, also very highly decorated, very well accomplished as well, Franco, aka Forever King Jr., aka Burrito Voorhees. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me tonight. And how are you guys doing?
Thanks for having us.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, it's going to be a fun time. Thanks for having us.
So I want to start with Mortal Kombat 11. Your guys' thoughts on the state of the game right now, how you feel about the game, what has caused you to be a little more vocal on your lack of interest. You guys have mentioned many times in conversations about the depth of the game being kind of like a turnoff for you. If you guys can talk about how you guys feel and kind of elaborate on that point a little bit, and we'll start with Franco here.
Yeah, like a lot of the depth was taken away going into MK11. Like, for example, like there's way less combos. Uh, the wake up system is horrendous. Every character's wake up input's the same, and every character has an invincible wake up. Like, yeah, they have different properties, but they're pretty much generally the same. Like, there's no character with no wake ups completely. For example, like MKX Quan had 0 viable wake ups. There's no MKX Quan level of wake ups in MK11 because everybody has that invincible wake up option, and like the crushing blow mechanics take away a lot of the combo depth as well because they do all the damage for you, assuming you have a viable crushing blow requirement. And there's just like it just doesn't feel the same as the old NRS games because a lot of your options were taken away, and creativity is really limited.
All right, King.
So the best way I always describe it to people is like when I play Batman, I've been playing this character for basically like 7 years. But even when I go back today to like Injustice 2 or something, I still find new conversions and new combos that I've never done before. And it's exciting to do new stuff that you've never done, especially considering you've been playing that character for years and years. But
And that
I
game
don't
was
I
more
never get
legacy
that
as well.
exactly. So I never get that same feeling in MK11. Like pretty much all the stuff I'm doing with Shao Kahn or Gears or Kung Lao, I've been doing all that stuff since the first 1 or 2 days I started using that character. And even when you watch like other top players play, like if you watch the best Cetrion, they're doing the same exact combos as the 10th best Cetrion, and so on and so forth. But it's different. Like if you were to watch Injustice 2, me and Nubcakes, we play different from each other. If you were to watch MKX, like Michelangelo and Ketchup play differently from each other. Like there's way more individuality in the older NRS games, but in MK11 they simplified it to a point to where every single player just looks like they're playing all the characters the same. And I understand why they did it. They're thinking like if it's as simple as possible, it's going to be as balanced as possible. But in doing that, they took a lot of the fun out of it. So even if they did succeed in their goal of being as balanced as possible, it's just hard to have like excitement playing it. It's hard to have fun learning new things. You're just doing the same thing over and over.
That's actually a really great point you just made when you talk about individuality. You used a couple of great examples. I just want to go back to one of them very quickly. You brought up Michelangelo and Ketchup back in MKX. Two players, they play the same character in Quan Chi. They're both known for playing two different loadouts as their two different variations as their primary way to play the character. You had Michelangelo who would use Summoner, and every once in a while he would switch to Sorcerer for bad matchups. Ketchup would play Sorcerer, and he would switch to Summoner or whatever for a different matchup. But not only did these two play different variations, different loadouts of the same character, even when they played the same loadout, there was a clear difference in the two players. You could clearly see they used different setups, used them at different times, different combos to set up different things. There was just no similarity in how they played. And those two were different than this player, and that player was different from this player. Just the individuality was very clear in the previous NRS games. But with MK11, what's weird is With Ultimate, we get introduced to, hey, custom variations, more customization, which should promote more individuality, more unique ways of playing characters. But instead, it looks more limited. Besides just everybody always picking the same loadout, the characters even play the same. Like, you really can't tell the difference between this guy using that character and this guy over here using that character. They both look the same setups. They set up the same things at the same times in the same ways. There's just no real individuality in the characters from one player to the next. Why do you guys think that is? Let's start with Franco.
A huge problem is since they took away a bunch of your options, you can't really add too much. Like some characters have horrible customs, so they really don't even change that much, whatever, no matter what they equip. Some things are banned, like Garrus's Loss and Spare Time, which I really wanted to use that, but it's banned. He also has the Revive move that's banned, which I don't understand why they're banned, but they are. And then you have conflictions. You can't even pair some moves together. And then there's input conflictions, which means you have to choose one or the other because they have the same input. And so there's not as much creativity. And since they toned down the offense so much and just general depth with the characters, for example, Summoner Quan was so much more different than Warlock because Warlock had that low grab attack and stuff, and he could kind of mix you up better from a distance since he had that low grab. And then Summoner was more of the zoning archetype. But since they took away all these options that we would normally have, you can't really customize your character to be more different and stand alone compared to other people with different customs. So that's a huge problem in the customization and why it's so not so customizable. Like it's just you're kind of just if you have good customs then that's good, but most characters don't have good customs. Like Jackie, you can equip whatever you want with her and you'll still have an S tier character. But someone like I don't know who has bad customs in MK11. I don't even remember. It's been so long. Melina, for example, she has like different variations of the same move. She has to equip uh, one slot just to make her Psy throw aerial, or same thing with teleport. Like that's something that shouldn't cost a slot at all. So her slots are pretty much wasted potential, and she doesn't really change that much from them. No matter what you equip.
Yeah, so you're saying even though you have the ability to customize, there's still so many restrictions within the customization. People are still all bound to pretty much the same loadout anyway because there's so many restrictions on a lot of the characters.
Yeah, so it's like the shackles are like semi cut off, like not fully. Like you're not fully free to do whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
which is a huge problem and not so customizable.
Yeah. King, your thoughts on this as well?
I feel like, a big part of it is just because how simple MK11 is, but I also feel like the custom moves, they don't change the character's playstyle enough. Like if you were to pick Jackie, you could, to be honest, pick almost any three of her moves, any three, and she'll still be one of the top tiers in the game. And same with Liu Kang. You could pick like almost any three of his moves, and he'll still be the top tier. But that's not the case at all. And like in MKX, if you were to pick Summoner Quan or Sorcerer Quan, yeah, he'd be top. But if you were to pick the third variation, I forget what it's called, uh,
Warlock.
Warlock, that was considered low tier because they literally changed the character so much that it's impossible to put a tier list in MKX, just the character. It's like you have to use a variation tier list. That's how different the characters are from each other. Like Hishku 10, if there was a variation tier list, Hishku 10 would be like literally 50 spots above Warrior Predator. And Drunken Master would be all the way at the bottom of the tier list, but then like Dragon Breath would be more towards like the middle or middle top. The variations did play way different from each other.
So the
Whereas in
variations
MK,
system had more of an impact then than it does now.
Yeah, in MK11, there's certain moves that kind of change the way the characters play a lot. Like if they replace a really important move, like with Scarlet, she could replace the Blood Tentacle with something. But for the most part, the variations they don't change the character enough. It's still the same character. It's like I was saying, any you could pick any three moves with Shao Kahn, he's still gonna be bottom tier. There's no, moves that you could pick that's gonna move his tier. And you could pick any three moves with Jackie, she's still gonna be top tier. There's no possible like three moves you could pick with Jackie that's gonna move her down to mid tier. She's just her as a base is just too solid to be anywhere lower than top tier. And Shao Kahn as a base is uh too weak to be anywhere lower than bottom tier.
Yeah,
So
I see what you're saying. So the specials were so dramatically different in how the characters changed in one game, and then in the other game, the specials don't really play as much of a role.
yeah, not only do they not play as much of a role, they don't change how the character plays. So you're not gonna have.
It's a
It's not
different
like,
strategy.
yeah, exactly. It's not like how in MKX you could play Bojutsu Kungjin and you're like super rushdown and everything, and then all of a sudden you switch to Ancestral, and now you're more setup based. You got, think about how you want to set up your arrows and stuff like that. But in MK11, if you were to pick a character and switch their moves, you almost have the same game plan for the most part. The moves don't change the game plan enough, so it's not gonna like get your excitement up or pique your curiosity to switch the variations around.
What would you say is the mechanic, just the in the game? Could be anything: breakaway, fatal blows, whatever, wake up system that frustrates you the most.
Probably the wake up system, because like uh, I want to say flawless block is next, but I'll explain that. I know you wanted me to answer one, but wake ups, because there's just so many wake up options. There's like 6 or 7 wake up options you have. Just get up buttons, because you have like 20 get up frames of invincibility, which is ridiculous. So you can't really Oki. They have delay, get up. They have forward and back roll, so that's 4. Then they have up 2 and up 3, so that's 6. So like you can't, like, you don't, with all those wake up options, like your opponent is like not really forced to block. Like they could just do all these random wake up options that you can't like really stop. So you're pretty much forced to back off on Oki, which is like counterintuitive. Like, like if you knock someone down after opening them up, you should be rewarded with that knockdown. But in this game, you have to back off because you might get wake up buttons done, or just some way of getting comboed after knocking them down from like wake up roll or something. Or they could even flawless block you as they're getting up, which is why I said flawless block was the second thing. So, like,
What about all the people
uh,
that say the wake up system is fine, just back off and let them get up?
I don't think they've played a traditional fighting game then. I don't know. It's just very strange that you can just be a maniac off the ground in this game, which that should never be the case in a fighting game.
You think that's frustrating for? I can imagine that more people than not find that very frustrating because it feels like people knockdowns are a big deal in fighting games. You're supposed to feel like, oh crap, I got knocked down. You feel like people get knocked down, and I guess you're describing they more feel like empowered, like I'm going to get up with this, that, or that like they don't ever. You're not able to either control the situation. So, what do you find yourself doing more so when you knock somebody down? Do you back
I
off? Do
just
you down one? What?
I Oki with down 1 most of the time, but even then that's scary because they could just up 3, and then from there you're pretty much screwed unless you floss block out of hit stun, which is like my second least favorite thing. Again, it doesn't promote blocking or any type of defense at all. It's just a steal, like a turn steal, and it's just
So it
there's
feels
just
like
no
you're
type
getting
of
off the ground with
fundamental
offense then.
defense at all.
So if it's not defensive, because it does feel that way, I guess. It feels like your options on the ground are more offensive options. Besides up three and the backward roll, they feel like more offensive options in a defensive situations. Forward roll, you know, delay wake up buttons, that kind of stuff. Because the whole point of delay is to get the wake up buttons or wake up jump. So they're kind of like offensive options that are disguised as defense in a defensive situation. It sounds like.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I said, it just there's no fundamental defense in this game. Like I said, there's just so many options you can do that aren't block, you know? Like you can't just tell your opponent, "Hey, respect my Oki. You have to block this," because there's 6 wake ups they can do if they don't want to block. So, I think it's just like people that can like normally like people that would have bad defense in other games, that's not the case in MK11. So you can't abuse their bad defense when you knock them down because they have all these offensive wake up options. So it's just kind of frustrating when you get full comboed or something when it's supposed to be your turn.
Yeah. King, most frustrating mechanic of MK11 for you.
Yeah, probably the wake ups are the same for me as well. I don't like how you can stand up with all this invincibility. I feel like there should be a time period when you're standing up off the ground where if you don't commit to like a up three, up two, or roll, if you don't commit to one of those, there should be a longer time period where your only option is blocking, like before you actually are able to like jump or mash buttons or something like that. It feels like they go from laying on the ground to like stand jabbing so fast that it's hard to be consistent in stuffing it. But that wasn't the case in other games. Like I never once in Injustice 1, Injustice 2, MK9, MKX, I never once felt like I knock someone down, I go in to attack them as they're standing up, and then they can just stand jab me first out of it. I mean, I'm sure it's happened here and there, but never as frequently, nearly as frequently as it happens in MK11. In MK11, it happens all the time. Um, so they should, if they would just tone down those invincibility frames as they're standing up, and if they would make it so where they're forced to block for a longer period of time before they can perform action, it would make it way more bearable.
Let me just tell you why
Um,
that's because I know people are listening. I broke this down a while back why that's not actually possible. So the way the invincibility works, the way the wake up system in general works, is the entire process of getting up from beginning your rising process to where the game considers you at a complete stand and you now have control of your character where you can move, strike, guard, etc. That whole process takes about 15 frames. And the game gives you full invincibility for all 15 frames. Now on frame 14 of this process is where your forward roll, backward roll, up 3, up 2, that's where these attacks begin to animate, they begin to come out. So you have your invincibility that people say, okay, well, maybe we should have less. 15 frames is too much. Well, let's just say, for example, they said, all right, we'll give you 10 frames of invincibility instead. Well, now the problem comes in with the wake up attack. See, the wake up attack is going to come out on frame 14, but you're only going to be invincible for 10 of those frames. So you're never going to get the wake up attack out because you're going to get hit long before the wake up attack is even possible to begin to come out. So if you only had 10 frames of invincibility and kept the wake up system as it is, then just nobody would ever be able to get off the ground at all. There'd be no mind game in anything because you would just get knocked down and you'd never be able to get up. Now, of course, an answer that sounds simple is, well, if the wake up attacks are coming out on frame 14, let's just make them come out on frame 9. So we'll give you 10 frames of invincibility instead of the 15, and now your wake up attacks will come out in frame 9. It sounds like problem solved, less invincibility, wake up attack can still come out. But this is where a big problem comes into play. See, because the wake up attacks, your up 3s and up 2s, they are also part of another system in the flawless blocking system. They're tied together. Now, in order to be able to flawless block and get your up 3s and up 2s out, if you're blocking some of these quicker attacks like a down 1, your up 3 and up 2 has to be reasonably quick. Otherwise, the opponent would just block it. Well, the problem is when you take these fast attacks and you make them wake up attacks, and there are some up twos that are like 8 frames, like Liu Kang's, Sonya's, etc. If these attacks come out on frame 9, there are some knockdowns in which the character takes a little longer to recover, even though they've knocked you down. Now, if you're able to pop up, on frame 9 of your get up animation with an 8 frame wake up attack, well, some of these knockdowns you wouldn't be able to block in time because the move that causes the knockdown has a decent amount of recovery as well. And now, instead of you being able to block the wake up attack, some of these wake up attacks, since they'd be coming out so much faster now, since you changed the whole wake up system to deal with less invincibility, now they're actually going to hit you. So it's just a real issue because instead of creating two separate systems, you have your flawless block with your up threes and your up twos. They also tied that into the wake up system. So rather than saying, okay, just like every other NRS game, your wake up attacks are going to be individual to your character specials, and then put up three, up two in the category of flawless block, they just put them both in the same pool. Your wake up system and your flawless block attacks are all tied in to the same like pool there, which is what causes that problem, which is why you need that invincibility. Now, I think the wake up system is frustrating for two reasons. One, the reasons that both of you guys listed, all the options, the invincibility, the wake up buttons, etc. But also, again, going back to that character individuality, whereas you have, every character is basically doing up three, up two, etc. And this also, I think, hurts the balance a little bit because you have, let's take two characters, Cetrion and Shao Kahn. Cetrion is obviously a much better character in pretty much every way. However, because they both have the same wake-up attacks, it's kind of like a stalemate. Like, I know Shao Kahn's up three goes farther, but it's the same up three, up two roll kind of system. Well, what if Cetrion had to use rock wall, boulder, things like that as a wake-up attack, but Shao Kahn got shoulder, hammer lunge as a wake-up attack? Well, now Shao Kahn is getting up with full combo starters, like with launchers. One of them in the hammer lunge can go just about full screen and is a safe launcher. Now, Cetrion, regardless of where she knocks a character like Shao Kahn down, she has to show him the ultimate respect from pretty much anywhere on the screen and has to be careful because he has these high damaging capable wake-up attacks. Whereas Shao Kahn wouldn't have to show Cetrion as much respect because all it's going to be is the risk reward would be more so in his favor post knockdown. And she would have to be more cautious on him. This keeps characters with their own individuality in certain systems. It also adds to characters having different strengths and weaknesses in different situations, say the wake-up system. I mean, does this make any sense to you guys? Do you guys agree, disagree? What are your thoughts? Let's start with Franco here.
Yeah, because like you said, every character's wake-up has the same effect pretty much. I think they all do like 9% if I'm not mistaken, if you do a up three or something. So yeah, like if Shao Kahn could wake up shoulder, for example, which is a launcher, he could be high risk, high reward on knockdown, whereas Cetrion, she would be high risk, low reward, which it should be that way because she's like one of the most oppressive offensive characters in the game because you can almost never get in on her. So you should be heavily rewarded when you knock her down. And she should have very struggling times getting up off the ground. And it would just make things more diverse, like you said, because if you have wake up shoulder that leads to a launcher, you better be careful so you don't get launched by one of the highest damaging characters in the game into one of the best corner carries, and and so on.
Yeah, it'd be much better if characters just had their own wake ups and these characters could wake up this way and these characters could wake up that way. And not only is it going to make you think more and make the game deeper, make matchups more, things you have to learn, but it wouldn't just be as straightforward as how the MK11 wake up system is. And with how straightforward the MK11 wake up system is, it's like if Joker could do what he could do against this character's wake ups, it's kind of like he could do that against everyone.
Yeah, because there's no exactly. So if you stop one, you stop them all, because they all have the same options.
So like it feels like Injustice 1, for example, you might be fighting Batman and you can abuse his wake ups because he only has slide and that's it. But then you fight Shazam and all of a sudden he could teleport forward, he could teleport backwards. He could wake up with the Psycho Crusher. So it's like now you got to think of so many different things, and you're not gonna. There's no character. There's no one character that's just gonna abuse every other character on knockdown. It's gonna be impossible if every character just has different wake ups.
Something that both of you have mentioned, and many people have mentioned, is on the subject of the depth in Mortal Kombat 11 or lack thereof. And I feel like when casuals talk about depth, one of the first things you hear is, well, the combos. There's not as many combos, there's not as many combo paths. And obviously, this is true, and we would like to see more of this in Mortal Kombat 11. But I feel like when the subject of depth is broached, one of the first things people think about is, oh, well, you guys are just talking about, combos. But, I'm just curious, when you guys are talking about the depth that you don't have in the game to keep you playing, to keep you more interested, 2+ years into the game, what do you mean by that? Elaborate on what you guys mean by, you would have liked it to have had more depth. Let's start here with Franco.
Like, other than just combos, since the wake up system's universal and every character has pretty much the same wake ups, like, for example, as a Bane player in Injustice 1 and 2, GJ Max found that tech to where you can absorb wake ups with armor because some would be invincible, but he would have setups to where the command grab would whiff. Like, for example, if you wanted to blow up wake up slide from Batman, his invincibility frames would make the command grab whiff, but the armor would still be there. So you could whiff punish the slide by eating the slide with the armor, and then you could full combo him without even having to block. And you'd also cover like parry, and like that kind of stuff is pretty much not existent in MK11. Like there's not character specific tech against some wake ups that that's kind of like an archetype Bane had. If he knocked you down, he was just steamrolling you like a snowball. And I just don't find that kind of stuff in MK11 against the wake up system. And the wake up system, like I said, was horrendous because it just doesn't really promote solid defensive play at all. Because you have all these wake ups that you can just use before you even want to block. So that's like another example of depth is finding anti wake up setups and stuff. There's other examples out there that I could go on about, but that's just one off the top of my head that isn't combos.
Yeah, I was gonna say another form of depth is like decision making. Like for example, in Mortal Kombat X, if you're like -5 on block, there's so many different things you have to think about. Uh, both characters have invincible backdash, so if you try to attack, they could backdash, they'll whiff punish you. They could armor, but then there's a lot of armors where if you were to backdash that whiff, you would punish it, or there's a lot of armors where you can jump over it and make it whiff, or if they attack, then the armor wins. I know there's a lot of people that don't like armor, but no matter what you think about armor, it did create a lot more things to think about and a lot more decisions to make. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be like MKX. It could be like MK9 doing something that's like slightly neutral or slightly minus on block. There's still so many more things to think about between what the two characters are going to do. And in MK11, it's just so much more simple. Like if someone's -3 on block, there's not that many things to think about. The only thing that's like slightly, different as far as depth in the decision making is flawless block, but flawless block brings other problems. Like, someone could be +10 on hit and then try to go
And that's
for,
also universal.
yeah, someone could try to go for, guaranteed pressure after being +10 on a hit, and then you could still flawless block them on hit.
Yeah.
So even though flawless block does bring a little bit of depth, I feel like it brings a lot of problems
But it's also
along with
frustrating, right?
that.
Like, say you up three somebody and you're like +30 or whatever it is, and you say, okay, I'm going to jail them into this. Now, you spent a defensive and offensive bar for that. and then they flawless block up to you, and now you don't have the bar to break because you use that bar for the up three, and you're properly following up your. And that's also a universal as well, right? So that also goes into that depth where every character does that, right? It's a lot of the system mechanics all fall into kind of like a universal bubble, do they not?
Yeah, so like everyone has flawless block, everyone has wake up three, everyone has wake up forward roll, everyone has wake up back roll, everyone has wake, like everyone just has the same shit basically. Like there's not that much characters that individualize themselves enough from each other. Uh, like in MK9, Cabal feels way different than Kung Lao, which feels way different than Johnny Cage, which feels way different than Freddy Krueger. There's not that much. There's not that much difference between the characters in MK11 as there is in other games, because they tried to simplify the game so much just to make it balanced. But by simplifying it, all the characters are too similar now.
So I'm curious to see how you guys feel about this notion here. You hear all the time that Mortal Kombat 11 is the most balanced NRS game of all time, which, I mean, it probably is. And people seem to put the fact that as the most balanced NRS game of all time, it also means that it is the best NRS game of all time. The balance or the being the most balanced NRS game of all time seems to be like the primary reason why people associate most balanced with best. So, how do you guys feel about those who say, well, I mean, why would you, or feel about the notion of why would you want to go back and play these broken NRS games like MKX or Injustice or whatever when you have the most balanced, hence best NRS game of all time right here in Mortal Kombat 11?
I have an answer for that.
Go ahead.
So it's a common misconception that balance equals fun. Like, yeah, balance is important because you don't want a game to be super broken. But I wouldn't even say balance is in the top three most important things for a game to be fun. Uh, just because a game is like broken, like look at Marvel vs. Capcom. There's so much crazy broken shit going on, but at the same time, it's considered the most exciting game to watch. And that game lived like basically until died, really. Marvel 2 lived until Marvel came out, and Marvel 3. There's still a lot of people that love playing that game. Look at Super Smash Brothers Melee. That game was released in 2001, and it's considered like one of the least balanced out of all the Smash games. There's only like 8 viable characters out of 26 characters, but the depth is so high, and it's so fun to keep learning characters, keep learning the depth, and keep learning the matchups. That literally 20 years later, Melee is still like the biggest Smash game, and but it's like the least balanced. So balance does not equal fun. Depth and being able to play a character for years and years. That character, that's people are gonna people are always gonna choose like individuality and creativity over just having a balanced game.
Franco, what about you?
I agree with that point. Like, Injustice 1 was known for having such polarizing matchups. Like, you had people getting 8-2'd, for example, like Lex versus Zod at the highest level was 8-2. But, it's just that imbalance comes from different archetypes. Like, for example, like in real life, if people were all the same, nobody would be different. Like in MMA, like you have, Muay Thai, kickboxing, wrestlers, jujitsu people, like all sorts of archetypes that all have their advantages and disadvantages when they're paired up with each other. And the more diversity, the better, in my opinion, because, zoning, for example, in MK11 is so weak. So, you have M2 Dave over here just like struggling to find a main because his archetype is not strong in MK11 as a zoner. But, all the rushdown people are pretty much happy and fine because they can pick through almost all the roster and have a rushdown character. So the more diversity, the more people you can invite into the game because their archetype probably exists in some shape or fashion, you know? So it's not so limited on how you can play because you have those options with that diversity and imbalance, you know?
Yeah, I
If
see
every
exactly what you're
single,
saying. Yeah.
I was gonna say like going on. I think he made a really good point with the diversity thing in real life. Like, if every single human being in the world was like the same exact person, like if we're all like a clone of each other, like technically it would be the most equality, but at the same time that would be the most boring thing ever. Like, who would want to live in a world like that, you know? In MK11, not every character is literally identical, but they're close enough to like get that analogy that I made. Like, you don't want a game where all the characters play so similar. Every character has false block. Every character wakes up. You know, you want a lot of differences. That's what makes it fun. That's what makes it interesting.
So I find it funny that you brought up Lex Luthor because I think just about everyone at this point has seen the clip of Revolver playing Lex Luthor going up against Relax State, who's playing Zod, and he's just getting pelted by these instant air Zod balls and Zod's trait, and he can't move. He has to move at the speed of evolution, slowly walking and ducking and crawling his way across the stage. And the announcers are laughing about this match. Is just about, it looks unwinnable. It is. It's terrible, right? And obviously, people get a nice little laugh out loud moment of, look at how bad some of these old NRS games were. Look at the balances, look at the tier list, etc. But what's funny is a character like Lex Luthor, despite being considered more toward the bottom end of the tier list than the top, he still has a purpose because, while, yeah, it sucks to be caught in these kind of garbage matchups, and he certainly does have a few of them, he does have a purpose because two of the three best characters in that game, Martian Manhunter and Aquaman, and those two characters pretty much steamroll a vast majority of the roster. He is not only considered to be a good character to pick against those, he is actually considered to be a counter who beats them. So even though he's considered more low tier, he still has more of a purpose as opposed to, while you have this balanced, most balanced NRS game of all time in MK11, a character like Lex Luthor in Injustice 1 in the lower tier has more of a purpose than like a lower tier character in Mortal Kombat 11, does he not? King, what do you think?
No, that's 100% true because in Injustice One, the characters are different enough that even if a character is considered really bad, uh, the differences can make it can help against like Martian, Aquaman. Like you said, uh, Lex Luthor is like Aquaman's worst matchup, and he is Martian's worst matchup. Even though Lex Luthor's like number 15 or 20 in the game, and they're top three. But in a game like MK11, there's not enough differences in the character. So since there's not as many differences in the character, if you were to take like a top tier versus a low tier, it's almost impossible for that low tier to have a winning matchup because they're just too similar. And the reason that that character is higher is it does the same things the character that he's higher than does. They do the same things, but the higher character just does it better. So for you to have a low tier character do well against a top tier character, they would have to play really different. But it doesn't happen in MK11.
So recently, people have become a little more frustrated as we move closer to summer with, how long it has been since MK11 has really gotten any significant updates. Not that it needs new content, so to speak, like, DLC characters, but people are just getting more and more frustrated in, nothing that really shakes the meta up. In this time period, we've seen the resurgence of some older NRS games, namely MKX. Twitch Rivals held MKX Lives. Mr. Aquaman held a special qualifier for this on the Coliseum. And actually, this season, the Coliseum is doing every NRS game. Destroyer is also doing a special 4-week MKX edition of Champions of the Realms. So we're seeing MKX kind of creep back into the competitive online scene. But offline tournaments are coming back now finally, which is a great thing. And so far at the offline tournaments that have been announced, only Mortal Kombat 11 is confirmed at these events as far as NRS titles go. Do you think it'd be a good idea, or what are your thoughts on maybe some of these offline tournaments incorporating more than just Mortal Kombat 11? Maybe incorporating an Injustice 2 or an MKX as main games, kind of like the way, for Capcom, you would have events hold Street Fighter and Marvel, maybe like an MK11 and an Injustice 2 or MK11 and MKX, something along those lines. What do you think about that? Was that something that you would like to see? Is it something that you'd be interested in attending? Back attending those events and competing again. What are your thoughts on this?
I
Yeah,
would
if
love
it's yeah, that would be a dream come true. I mean, if it's possible to fit in the venue or wherever we're having it at, that would be awesome.
if MKX or Injustice 2 was at CEO, I would enter those, but I'm not entering MK11. So
I think I mean not MK11. I think Combo Breaker out of all the tournaments we have, Combo Breaker and CEO are like the best for NRS games, especially Combo Breaker because they always had like another NRS game. Like they had an MKX tournament, what, in 2019? I think it was last, because obviously 2020 was the
2018.
pandemic. Oh, 2018. I'm sorry. Um, Wait, no, wasn't there one in? Okay, never mind. I don't even remember, but yeah, like that game came out in its it came out in 2015 or 2014 or something like that. But usually our game cycles last 2 years and then they're just dead. But Combo Breaker brought it back on top of the new game. So like it would be cool, like for example, if Combo Breaker brought a lot of the NRS games back, like they did in previous years, because they treat us really well, and we're really appreciative of that. And that would be something really fun. I would look forward to, and I would definitely travel again because it's not restricted to only Mortal Kombat being there.
that's part of what made me start the NRS gauntlet. Like I never thought I had like little thought of it in the past to like, I love all the NRS games, so I just want to play them all. But I think MK11 being what it was, that's what made me really want to do the NRS gauntlet because it's like I would much rather play all five than just focus on MK11. But like during Injustice 2, I didn't start an NRS gauntlet because I was having enough fun with Injustice 2 that I was okay with just streaming only Injustice 2 and just making only Injustice 2 content on YouTube and stuff like that. I didn't feel like I had to reach back in the past to have fun, if that makes sense.
All right, so I want to stay on the topic of these offline tournaments possibly incorporating other NRS titles. Now, obviously, there are plenty of people who love Injustice, but in the NRS community, it's more of a Mortal Kombat community than it is Injustice. MK will always be preferred by more people than Injustice. So let's just say MKX, that some TOs get interested and they say, okay, there's some interest in MKX. But of course, there are always those people that are going to say, well, why bother with MKX? It's just a 50-50 fest. That's kind of like the narrative around MKX, right? It's all 50-50s and that's all the game is and it's not really fit for tournaments, etc. What do you guys say to that? Like in your opinion, to kind of that narrative surrounding MKX?
So, as far as the 50/50s go, that's true, but it's not as easy as just enforcing the 50/50s because obviously, since there's depth in the game outside of the monotonous 50/50s, uh, there's still depth. You have to pick up on the conversions with your character. You have to pick a variation. Uh, you have to learn the combos. They're harder to execute. The damage isn't just done for you, like a crushing blow. For example, Garrus's forward 2-2 crushing blow on counter or punish. I press 3 buttons, I get 34%. No type of execution. It's all done for me. But in MKX, I gotta learn way more. I gotta practice, and it's harder to stay consistent with the combos, and then you're more likely to drop combos, especially in a tournament situation where it's a really close set or something. So there's a lot more possibility for error in MKX because of the fact that you have to work harder to be better and progress in the game. And yeah, like I said, there is 50-50s. A lot of people give it too much crap, though, for being a 50-50 fest. Because, like, if I were to pull, like, I don't know, if I was to pull some random person on the street and be like, hey, pick up this game in a week and see if you can go up against Ninja Killa. Like, that's what they make it sound like. They make it sound like the game is so dumbed down by 50-50s to where you can just win, like, easily against the highest level players, you know? And I don't think that's the case at all.
Yeah, so I pretty much agree. Like, just because the game has a lot of 50-50s doesn't make that simple. That's like saying UMK3 is just run jab and that's it, you know? Like, yeah, those games are aggressive, and that's the main thing about them is, being rushed out and aggressive. But there's so many things that you're learning about your character as you're, abusing that rush out and stuff like that. And those things that you're learning about the game as you're getting better at it is more interesting than the things that you're learning in MK11 as you're trying to get good at it. Um, I think even in UMK3, it takes like many, many months or even years to get good enough to like be playing those characters at the highest possible level. But like I said earlier, in MK11, you're going to be basically doing everything that's possible with your character within the first 2 or 3 days of using that character. There's no like playing a character for months and then discovering new stuff. Uh, you know it all right away, basically. It's as simple as just watching someone else. Like if you just watch the best player, you can just easily imitate everything they do.
So, Franco, you mentioned crushing blows just now. And, the crushing blow has oftentimes been referred to as a quote unquote casual mechanic. But, I mean, I do think it definitely is a form of, second and third chance mechanics, a comeback mechanic. I think crushing blows kind of fall into that category. But, I mean, do you guys also think that this is also made to simplify the gameplay? Where one crushing blow, as you mentioned with Garrus, can be as much as a full combo in another game, or maybe a crushing blow into like an uppercut is the same as like a devastating full combo in another game. How do you guys really feel about the crushing blow mechanic and what it says about the game? Is this just another way to try to maybe simplify it further?
Yeah, pretty much. Like outside of the only thing crushing blows does fundamentally is just knowing when to use them because you only get one chance to use it. I like that aspect of it, but they're so polarizing in other areas. Like you said, it's a lot of hand holding for casual players, and it makes the game way more accessible than it needs to be. And that's why you see top players like Sonic, Ninja Killa, like they don't even compete in these tournaments that are online tournaments that would be like easy for them to win because the game is so accessible. Like it's stressful to them to play these new players that they don't even know, like they don't even know who these people are, and they're like damn near losing to some of these people because of how accessible the game is by the game's mechanics, you know?
Yeah,
And
that's a
it
good
just
point.
makes competing way more stressful for them and other top players. Like even Dragon said it a lot on Twitter. If you guys follow him on Twitter or YouTube, he made a lot of good points on why the game shouldn't be so accessible and why it's scary to compete and stressful.
That's actually quite interesting when you bring up Dragon's tweet. So, for those who don't know, or maybe you forgot about it, a while back, Dragon tweeted that, I actually feel more comfortable going up against, or I'd rather go up against someone like Sonic Fox. And keep in mind, Sonic Fox is the best player in the world. I'd much rather go up against him than some guy I don't even know, who's probably maybe 1/10 of Sonic Fox's level. And he's not the only one that says things like this. Like Sikander, I was watching one of his streams, and they're like, "Hey, why are you always playing Combat League? Why don't you try to seek out some better players?" And he goes, "Listen, you don't understand. I would much rather fight Sonic Fox than these guys over here in Combat League. But they're actually more frustrating to deal with than someone at the highest level." And he gives an example like, if I'm an Elder God and I'm going up against an Elder God, I find it much easier to win that fight than if I'm an Elder God and they match me up with someone that at like master level. And a lot of people talk like this in the game. And a little bit is kind of tongue in cheek, a little over exaggeration just to kind of get the point across. But you never hear this in other games. Like you never hear someone in Tekken go, "I'd much rather run into someone like Nee than, some dude in pools, right? Or some random guy in ranked." You never hear that. And yet you hear it so many times in Mortal Kombat 11.
I feel like in Injustice and all the other NRS games, the skill ceiling was so high that if you were better than someone, it's almost like you're automatically gonna win. Not automatically, but you have a way better chance of beating someone that's lower level than you. But in MK11, the skill ceiling is so low that someone that only picked the game up or picked that character up a couple days ago, they can already do everything that character is capable of doing. So now it's just down to the mind games. But it's like you could be putting so much more time and so much more hours and so much more practice in, and yet this player is already playing that character at the maximum of their capabilities. So you're not going to beat them as easily as in Injustice. Um, if someone just picked up Zatanna a couple days ago, I know they're going to be free wins because she's so hard to master. If you didn't play her for at least a couple months, you're going to have no chance, you know. But that's not the case. In like MK11, you could pick up Baraka and just do like 50 to 60% combos off of a down two or off of, gutted. And it's like now every person you play is scary because every person is capable of doing everything with every character.
So when you talk about skill ceiling, so are you basically saying that the options are way too powerful for how accessible they are and how easy it is to access these tools and a lot of these options in order to pretty much take a character from, very early in your development with a character up to its maximum potential? So it doesn't take long to be able to go from, very early into a character over a couple of weeks, and within a month, maybe less, you're doing 50, 60% combos on average. So it's just a matter of the tools just being too powerful for how easily accessible they are.
Yeah, the accessibility is just too overwhelming. Like it's just like my brother said, there's not any required grinding to pick up on those. Like you can pretty much just pick your character and just start doing the optimal stuff in a few hours after watching some YouTube videos or something. And that accessibility is a huge problem because usually the top players would be the players that grinded the most and put in the most work with whatever characters they do or play. But that isn't the case for some random, I don't know, say a Call of Duty player that's just like, oh, I want to play MK11. And, they're damn near beating Sonic Fox or top players on Combat League or something. And since they're a Call of Duty player and they don't really think like fighting game players, and they just don't feel like blocking, for example, on Wake Up and just do whatever the heck they want, it just makes it that much harder to have a control that you can't control your opponent in any way at all in MK11, which is why I say it has so much unpredictability and random factor in it, which is super like stressful for a competitive, like supposed to be competitive game. I think
Yeah.
it's very not. It's uncompetitive when you have all these accessible options that you can't control at all.
King, when people say quote unquote random factor with MK11, is that pretty much what they mean? Like, what is your take on that? Like, what does that really mean to you? Like, I'm playing this guy and he's so random, I'd much rather play Sonic Fox.
I think what's happening is in MK11, there's not that many situations where you're forced to like block or forced to do something a certain way. Like for example, in MKX, if you knock down Quan Chi, he can't just be like, "Oh, I'm gonna press random buttons or do whatever." Like he has to block. He has no other options. So that's gonna force Quan Chi to actually play smart. And if he doesn't play smart, if he plays like quote unquote random, then that's just a free win for the other player. But in MK11, you have so many options at your disposal that are so easy
So get out of
that
jail free card. So
yeah,
second and third chance mechanics is what you're talking about.
yeah. So there's no situation like how Quan Chi gets knocked down or how Batman gets knocked down. There's no situations like that in MK11. There's no situations where you're being forced to commit, which is going to make you think about your decisions. It's like you have so many options at your disposal at all time. Fatal blow, it gives it to you every round, and it's this huge 30% damage move. Rolling. You're never like forced to like be patient or like forced to like think critically in a specific situation. It's like, and you could just random forward roll, and now you're blowing somebody up, or random breakaway, and now you're blowing somebody up. There's way too much. Way too many options that the person that's like trying to make the other person play smart. There's too many things to think about, so it's hard to like pinpoint someone down and force them to play a certain way and control them.
But if you're playing someone that you already know is high level, they're going to think a certain way, more so like you would, as opposed
Yeah,
to so.
exactly.
So let me ask you the if there's if not one thing, but in just in general, people talk about MK11 needing an overhaul. Obviously, just giving DLC characters isn't the answer because the problem is you're putting them in the same game that we're all playing now, right? So, like you've mentioned, King, you put in DLC characters, but within like a week or two, you're going to play them to their maximum potential. So it's not really you're still not really, which is why they get stale so quickly. But if there were to be an overhaul, what would have to happen to the game that would interest you in coming back to it? Let's start with Franco and then go to King.
Uh, that's a big wish list, but in long story short, I think they should make it to where you can, like, I know this is super unlikely, but in a perfect world, I think you should be able to equip every custom possible to have a complete character with no type of conflictions at all. That alone would give you so much more options. And I know they want customizability, but just for the sake of my answer and opinion, just say you gave everybody all of their tools in one character, whereas having pieces of a character, you can have a complete character. So that alone will give you more options. Fix the second and third chance mechanics and make them way less, oppressive and less hand holding for to make it more accessible, like or raise the scale ceiling. So yeah, address breakaway, address the wake up system, the crushing blows. Uh, that's pretty much my wish list right there. Just giving you more options with the customs and just making complete characters by getting all of your moves in one character and toning down some things about the second and third chance mechanics. Oh, and fatal blow we haven't even talked about. That's another
That's
mechanic
been
that
beat into the
just
ground
is
so
a
much. Yeah, it's kind of
yeah, it's
like
just an ultra mechanic. You literally get it from losing, which is it's a clearly comeback mechanic. There's just again, just address the comeback mechanics and give us more options. Pretty much. Long story short.
Yeah, I would just like to see them loosen up and let us get crazy. Um, either give us all the moves, or if they don't want to give us all the moves, maybe increase the slots from 3 slots to like 4 or 5, so you have more things to choose from. Make it so there's no conflictions. Address fatal blow, address uh, breakaway, address the wake up system. Buff everyone that's considered lower mid tier. Just buff everyone. Make everyone on the level of Jackie and Cetrion and Joker being able to do a bunch of crazy stuff.
Well, people
Um,
always say, like, for example, like if you bring up some buffs to Shao Kahn, back when you guys were talking about that, the number one you hear you think you would always say is that would be broken, right? But I think you're saying, what's wrong with that?
yeah, like what's wrong with Shao Kahn being as good as
One,
Jackie? What's
it
wrong?
wouldn't have been broken anyway. Like you could literally say
Yeah,
like give Shao Kahn a down three that's 1 frame faster, and people will say that's they'll say it's broken. So I mean,
yeah.
yeah. So yeah, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, people were saying like, oh, if you make it to where if you false block his 4-3-4 string and he can still cancel out of it, he's gonna be broken. But they did that to him, and he's still like bottom tier. Um, I would like to see, Jackie's like really crazy. She can leap around the screen, and she has so many different ways that she can cancel her leap. And I would like to see all the characters powered up to that level. Like, I would rather the game, everyone that's basically below Jackie and Cetrion, just power them all up to their level. Maybe all the characters that have launching strings don't make the launching strings just like send you full screen. Like let us like pop you up mid screen so that there's more combo routes, there's more combo potential. You know, because in the long run, if there's more combo routes and combo potential, there's going to be more conversions, which that's going to lead us to finding new tech years from now. The way it is now, it's not possible to find new tech years from now. You want some type of creativity. I want someone like how I have Batman. 7 years later, I can still find new combo conversions. I would want something like that in MK11.
Both of you have been around since the very start of the NRS era, through every NRS game from MK9 all the way to the current game with MK11. In this time, you guys are very familiar with the NRS life cycle. Game comes out, it lasts 2 years. Next game comes out, rinse and repeat. I don't know if it was planned for MK11 to be the game that breaks this cycle and go longer than that 2 year span before the next title comes out. Or maybe it was the pandemic that caused this to happen. Maybe it was both. For whatever the reason, how do you guys feel that it's, of all the games that we wanted to have more time with, that it's actually MK11 that we got this time with? And every NRS game has always been, hey, one patch away. But we understand why we don't get that last patch, because the next title is out. Now here we have MK11, which I guess you could say is an overhaul away, still a patch, and we might not get anything. And not only that, if you think about, the next title maybe is a year, maybe a little longer from getting released. So if you think about it, by the time that title comes out, goes to its life cycle, and then we probably get another Mortal Kombat game, it could be maybe no sooner than 2026 before we get another Mortal Kombat title again. So I'm just curious, like, how do you feel like knowing that this title, MK11, this could be, the game until, as far as Mortal Kombat goes, we don't see another Mortal Kombat game for, 5 years and maybe even longer.
Probably even longer, honestly, because if the next game also has like a 3 to 4 year cycle like this, it could even be like 2027 or 2028, which for me, this is my least favorite NRS game. So that's gonna suck and Mortal Kombat's my favorite franchise of all time. So for Mortal Kombat 11 to be the one that we're stuck with, it's I'm probably not gonna be going back to it that much. Like whether we're playing Marvel vs. DC or Justice 3 or whatever it is, like that's what I'm gonna be sticking to. Um, if I do an NRS gauntlet, I'm still gonna include MK11 in it. It's not like I'm gonna it's not like I'm gonna go
Yeah, take it out.
MK9
Yeah.
and just yeah MK and then skip over MK11 and then do Marvel vs. DC or whatever. I'm still gonna include MK11 in like NRS, but it's for sure my least favorite, and for sure like I'm not gonna go back to that game specifically. I would only go back to MK11 if I was doing like a total NRS gauntlet type thing. I wouldn't go back to MK11 specifically just for that game.
Yeah, whenever the next game comes out, like if it is Marvel vs. DC, that would be amazing. Injustice 3, I'm fine with that too. Whatever. Uh, until then, though,
Well, waiting until
like
possibly 2028, maybe like if you go by King's Point or 2027, until the next
yeah, as
MK
far
game.
as the new Mortal Kombat, yeah, that could be a really long wait. Like I might even have kids by then. I don't know. It's just crazy to think about. How it could be such a long wait because if they do put in another game on top of MK and Injustice,
Yeah.
the cycle is just going to be way longer, pretty much.
All right. So, people have been waiting for what seems like eternity for some type of news from NRS of something that's going to maybe shift the meta around a little bit. We got a little something a couple of weeks back, minor update. Don't expect, anything big. It was no download required. It was just a small hot fix. Really, the only thing it did significantly was nerf Shiva. It did help Shao Kahn out a little bit, but nothing major as far as like nothing significant as far as the overall meta of the game. And, over the last several months, people have speculated, hey, maybe by the time we get the MK movie, also was the 2-year anniversary of MK11, we'll get something. And of course, nothing came. And then it got shifted to, well, surely by the end of the Pro Series, and Pro Series end is here, and no news. But now we have E3, and this was another time when people thought, hey, we might get something. Sunday, June 13th is Warner Brothers Day to present. Obviously, fingers crossed. But let's just say no news comes, and this is the end of any content of MK11. Nothing. No patches, nothing meta shifting, nothing. This is the final form of the game. And, we have to wait maybe a year and a half for the next title. That being said, if this is the final form of MK11 and this is how the game is going to remain for the next year plus, how will you remember Mortal Kombat 11?
I would remember it just as a gigantic snore fest that tried to fix itself with these minor patches that they released. So it's pretty much just being dragged on for so long and limping its way like to the next game. Like this game had no change at all. Every tier list pretty much this past year has been the same. Just always Jackie, Liu Kang, Fujin, Cetrion, and Joker at the top. Still is the same with the addition of Cabal now since he got buffed from customs. It's just nothing's being addressed really with the low tier characters enough at all. There's no major shakeup like you said, so I don't think assuming nothing changes and there's no overhaul, like it's just gonna be a snore fest for me pretty much, and that's all I'm gonna remember about MK11. Other than like the only good thing MK11 did for me, honestly, at this point, is introducing Garrus to the game and to MK's roster because he's such an awesome character, but his potential is wasted so badly by MK11 just being such a watered down game and being really boring. And same thing with Spawn. Like I honestly feel bad for all the Spawn fans that waited since MK9 to finally have Spawn, but in like the worst NRS title to date, in my opinion. So just a lot of wasted potential in MK11. Those two things, Snorefest and wasted potential for me,
Is this the worst of all the NRS games for you?
easily, like no question. Not trying to like bash the game or anything,
No, I
but
got you. No.
yeah, you don't see me competing for it, so that's why pretty much.
All right, King. Same question. If nothing gets done to MK11, this is how it remains. How will you remember the game?
So, I love competing. I was trying my hardest to hang in there. Like, Slayer has been inviting me to his streams for like exhibitions, and I'll play. I played in Outworld Television last season. I ended up making it to like ninth place. I was playing in this season, but it just hit me, and I had to send Outworld Television a message like, "Hey, I love you guys. Nothing against you. I hope nothing but the best for you guys. But can you take me off your list? Like,
When it say it hits
I
you, what do you mean by it hits you?
that I don't want to play MK11 like at all anymore. Like for the longest time, I was like, I won't play MK11 outside of competition, but I'll at least play it in competition just because I love competition that much. So like, if someone invited me on their stream for an exhibition, I'll do it, you know, but I'm not gonna play outside of that. But now, I was doing that for like the past year, but now I'm to the point where I don't even want to play it in exhibitions or tournaments. Like, I'm gonna go to CEO this year, and this is gonna be the first tournament in my whole entire career of attending tournaments that I attend a tournament and don't compete. I actually chose to not compete in Mortal Kombat 11 at the CEO, which is so weird. I never thought I would do this. I never thought I would go to a tournament and not compete, but it's just MK11 is just really not for me. And like I said, I tried to hang in there for as long as I could. Um, I would say ever since Evo, the first, Evo 2019 for MK11. I was practicing the game really hard and enjoying it and stuff like that. But after that, that's when I started losing interest, losing interest. I was still traveling to compete, but I wasn't playing the game outside of competing really. And then eventually it was just like, now it's finally got to the point where I don't even want to compete in it. I just want to, whatever the next game is, I'm ready for it. Um, I still have fun playing MKX. I still have fun playing Injustice 2, MK9, and Injustice 1. All those games, I played them all the way until the next game came out. Like MK9, I never got bored of it till Injustice 1. Injustice 1, I never got bored until MKX. Pretty much the same with the next two games.
Yeah.
This is the first time in NRS history where, you know, I've been forcing myself to play MK11 for like a year or so. I've been ready for, Injustice 3 or MK12 or whatever's next. I've been ready for that for about a damn year or year and a half. So it, I'm not gonna say it's a bad game. I'll give it like a 7 out of 10 or something. It's just not for me what I want. I feel like when I play Mortal Kombat, I want it to be crazy, explosive. Um, that's the whole point of Mortal Kombat. I kind of feel like this
The whole
slow
over the top
pace.
aspect is, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I kind of feel like this slow pace thing that they try to go for. It almost feels like they try to make it Street Fighter-ish, or they try to make it traditional fighting game-ish. But that's not what Mortal Kombat is supposed to be, though. Mortal Kombat is supposed to be over the top. It's supposed to be crazy. Um, like MKX and MK9 and UMK3, and some of the 3D games and stuff. I feel like they embody that Mortal Kombat spirit. But MK11 just doesn't feel like it embodies that Mortal Kombat spirit.
All right. So for our final topic here, I want to talk about the next title here. There's a ton of speculation, obviously, none of it confirmed as to what this title could be. We've heard the rumor that it's a Marvel title. Some people are still clinging to, no, it's definitely Injustice 3. Some say it's Marvel versus DC. No, it's MK versus Marvel versus DC. So people are all over the place with this. What are you guys hoping the next title to be?
Me, I want the best thing ever, in my opinion, and I think that would be Marvel versus DC. That would be the biggest fan service you could ever imagine.
Who would you pick
Just
in that game? Well, who would your character be?
my first Marvel character would be Hulk. or Sentinel, and then DC probably Bane or Darkseid, maybe
Okay.
Doomsday. Obviously, I like the big bodies. Even Ares too, even though he's not a big body, he was just so cool in Injustice One. I would really hope to see him come back again. But there's so many cool matchups you could do in Marvel versus DC. Like you could do like Ant-Man versus Captain Atom, Deadpool versus Deathstroke. There's so many cool matchups you could do, and like I said, biggest fan service ever you could do, because that would bring in so many fans into our scene, and they might even carry over into our future games. Who knows? Like that. That's just there's so much potential in that. But if they did do a Marvel vs. DC game or any future title, just let the shackles off, man, and give us freedom. That's all I care about is just for freedom.
Yeah. When do you, realistically speaking, just a blind guess, when do you think, what's the soonest you think we could see it?
Uh, my prediction's gonna be 20. I'm gonna say 22.
Okay, so sometime next year. King, what's your prediction on how soon we could possibly see the game
Well, my
and
my
what game
bad.
would it be?
I think the reveal will be like maybe next
2022.
year,
Okay. And
but the
so
release maybe like 23
23.
or something.
Okay. King, same question. When do you think we could get it maybe at its earliest? And what game do you want it to be?
I'm gonna guess that it's either gonna be late 2022 or early 2023. And you know, I do think with Ed Boon, hinting at Marvel stuff a lot, and he has the rights to Injustice and stuff. I think it is gonna be Marvel vs. DC, and that's what I would want it to be. That's like the most hype crossover. I mean, I guess technically Smash has the biggest crossover.
Who would you
Smash
main?
Ultimate with like
Marvel versus DC. Who does Forever King main? Give me one for Marvel, one for DC.
Hulk and Batman. I
God, you
got
guys both went the
the
Hulk?
yeah, the brains and the brawn.
You guys
Batman and
both
Hulk.
went the Hulk?
Even in Marvel, like Marvel's Capcom, we both made Hulk. So like Franco copied my favorite character, but that's okay.
I mean, if you wanted me to be more unique, I would maybe pick Ultron, Thanos, or even if freaking Galactus was in the game, I'd pick Galactus. Take up the whole screen with just his
Well,
face.
if NetherRealm was making it, they might actually put Galactus in the game. And then the community would say he's fine, and no one's playing Galactus anyway. And then like year two, they'd be like, "Why is Galactus in the game?" No, so just par for the
No,
course.
knowing NRS what they're gonna do, Galactus, he's gonna be pre-order. He's gonna be the pre-order character, like pre-order Marvel vs. DC, and you get Galactus. But
Yeah,
then he's gonna end up being low tier, just like
yeah,
Darkseid and Shao Kahn,
yeah. Pre-order to get Galactus. Yeah,
and he's gonna be low tier. That's the pre-order bonus. Oh, Goro from MKX.
Goro was
All
okay.
no, not day one.
Not day one, and not the last day
Yeah,
either. Goro, you had to catch Goro in the middle to
yeah.
get him.
Pre-order. The pre-order always is bad, but they're always hyped up to be a big, strong character like Goro, Darkseid, Shao Kahn. The pre-order bonus for Marvel vs. DC, it's either going to be Thanos or Galactus, and they're going to start off trash.
No,
Prediction.
yeah, that's the way it is. So you're hoping for DC versus Marvel as well.
100%. Yeah, that's the crossover that everyone talks about. Like whenever if there's like a comic book or like, I'm sure people have been wanting this video game to be created ever since
Yeah, I
video
agree.
games started.
Yeah, they do.
So
They do. That's
Yeah,
true.
like and with developers like NRS, they make their games look good. Like imagine the graphics that they like have and can implement with that kind of game. Because despite the in-game play from MK11, the game looks great. Like the visuals are amazing. Like that's like the best
It
thing
does.
MK11 does is the visuals are amazing.
No, it does. That's true. I mean, they all for their time look good. MKX looked good for its time. MK9 looked good for its time. I mean, and they do well for
Yeah,
their time. Yeah, they do
like
well.
MKX, like nothing was better than like at the time, nothing was better than seeing Shinnok's win pose and his sweaty hand with the earth just burning and crumbling it at the his
Did the
fingertips.
hand have sweat on it? Really?
Yep, the hand had sweat drips on it. His sweaty ass hand holding the earth, and he's just destroying it like death to all. You know.
Oh, I never noticed that. That's interesting. Well, I want to thank you guys both for joining me. When we don't really know what's in store with MK11, in theory, we could get something on Sunday, but if not, I don't think we're gonna get anything at all. And then from there,
What time is it on? Actually, I don't know.
I have no idea. I think it's like 11 something Eastern time. It starts, and
That's Sunday. You
yeah,
said.
yeah, is Warner Brothers
Oh, I
Day.
thought it was Saturday. I
No,
thought I was gonna miss it
WB
because of
is
work.
doing a presentation on Sunday, but it's speculated it's just Back for Blood, nothing MK related. So we'll just have to wait and see. And really, if nothing comes to MK11, I think the community is really going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting. And I really think the community has done a ton of heavy lifting in the pandemic. They didn't get much help from NRS on this. So because of that, I don't think we're going to get much help now. I just don't think these bonuses are going to be there. Or if they are, there's not going to be too many of them. So I do think it's going to be up to the community to kind of pull the game. And because of that, I do think that TO should consider putting Injustice 2 and MKX in their tournaments as well. So we'll just have to wait and see.
Thanks for having us. I hope everyone enjoyed the conversation and everything. This is interesting topics for sure.
Yeah. Well, I definitely appreciate you guys, and we'll see you guys around.
Have a good
Yeah,
one.
thanks for having us.